and welcome to our community. Suzie Thomas here with you this morning. So honored and privileged to welcome our guest this morning, newly sworn-in Mayor Thomas Burnaby of Canton. Good morning.
Well, good morning. Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Mayor, and certainly not a new name to public service in our area. Before we get into your new position, let's talk about maybe some of the highlights as you see of your public service in the past.
Well, I came to the job of mayor having been elected in the November 2015 election, but at the time I was a sitting Stark County Commissioner. I was elected as Stark County Commissioner twice, and I was a commissioner from 2010 until December 31, 2015. So that was a great job with working with a great group of people, and of course learned a lot about countywide government.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, my primary elected job was as the City of Canton law director,
mm-hmm.
and that was from 1989 to 2000. And I had been elected to that office 4 times, so I am very, very, very familiar with City of Canton legal and operational issues. I was the service director for a period of time. I was the SARTA interim director for a period of time. I served 1 term on city council. I was a Masson prosecutor once upon a time. So I've had, and a City of Canton assistant law director for a lengthy period of time. So I've had a lot of experience with local government at the municipal level and at the county level, and understand township government pretty well as a result of the county government experience. And of course, just have a lot of experience with City of Canton government. So I bring to the office a lot of experience. Hey, I'm old.
We'll call that experienced.
Okay.
We'll stay away from the O word. But you, let's get a little introspective. What is it about you, would you say, that has called you to a life of service like this?
Well, I just have enjoyed it. I enjoyed governmental service. Part of my service has been part-time, in which I am a lawyer, and I was a practicing lawyer pretty much, with part-time governmental jobs until 1989. That's when I was elected city law director. So essentially since 1989 to present, although, again, I retain my license as a lawyer, I do very little active practice of law, and it has all been in the public sector. Pretty much, and it's just an enjoyable experience for me. I get to use my legal training, and it's very, very helpful. The discipline is very, very helpful in doing governmental work, but it's just enjoyable from my perspective to be able to do things that benefit the public as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Specifically, some accomplishments that you are proud of.
I think when we look back at county government, that is at least the most immediate. When I took office in 2010, there were 3 county commissioners. I was elected at the same time as Janet Creighton,
mm-hmm.
and we worked very, very closely together. But when we came into county government was at an all-time low from a morale perspective, mm-hmm. and from a perspective of public respect. If you will recall, that's when the money had been stolen from the mm-hmm. treasurer's office.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of issues associated with that, and with the treasurer remaining in office. There were issues with the county sales tax levy expiring, and county finances were at an all-time low also. We were able to turn things around. We were able to obtain passage from the voters of a new sales tax, which remains in place.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to hire, in the period of time that I was there, we probably replaced or hired, after attrition and or retirements or otherwise, 7, I believe, new department head level people who have just done an A-plus job over there. Really, it's at any level of government, whether it's in the county government or whether it's in city government,
mm-hmm.
it is the department heads and, of course, the employees under them that really make things either work or not work for you. And that was just a great experience. So we were very proud of turning, county government around, and I think today county government is on very, very sound financial footing, and I think that it maintains fairly high respect and high regards from the public at large as to the job that they do.
We'll look at current challenges, but just one more question about that. It's got to be challenging to sit down at a desk with your colleagues and say, how are we going to turn this ship, this Titanic, around? And can you give any clues to, I mean, certainly change of personnel has something to do with that, but did you come up with a list of let's try this, 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 and this? Because it certainly is a different picture today.
Well, when I come to city government, of course, I had some preconceived ideas as to how government should be run.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's very, very important. And I ran essentially on the platform that Canton needed new and different and better leadership in the mayor's office. I believe that the office requires you to be open, transparent, to have a lot of dialogue and communications, just a high degree of work ethic. I believe that my job is to hire the best people to run departments, to participate in my cabinet, and to give them the freedom to exercise their best judgment with some input from myself. But I believe that I succeed when they succeed, and I give all credit to them for all of the work that they do. I just try to create an environment in which they are free to exercise the decision-making authority that resides in their respective departments and so forth.
And that's leadership. So let's take a look. What was it? Because you said you saw that we might benefit in the city of Canton by a change in leadership and a new mayor. What specifically was it that called you? Because it was a little unconventional, the way that you got into the mayor's office. I mean, you were certainly elected, but I know there was a bit of a brouhaha going on about whether or not you could run and so forth. You want to address that at all?
I did get here in a very unconventional manner. I had been a member of the Democratic Party and a Democratic office holder for probably 40 to 45 years. I elected to disaffiliate from the Democratic Party, and that occurred back in late April 2015 and the first week of May 2015, because the only way at that point in time, I had not run in the Democratic or any other primary, which was held prior to May. I had not signed up for it, and so the primary was held then. And at that time, the only way that I could run for mayor was to disaffiliate and get on a ballot as an independent candidate. So there were two issues associated with that. At the time, in April, I was residing outside of the city of Canton, although I owned a house that I have originally resided in, and I have always owned that house. I returned to that house, in early May. I also so I moved from outside the city limits into the city limits, and I also disaffiliated from the Democratic Party and became an independent. Both of those issues were challenged, as you are aware. There were hearings at the Board of Elections, and that case eventually went to the Ohio Secretary of State for a decision, and then to the Ohio Supreme Court, where the court unanimously ruled in my favor on both of the critical issues with regard to residency and with regard to disaffiliation. So that allowed me to get onto the ballot, and from there, we ran a very short in time duration campaign. We only had 2 or 3 months in order to run a campaign for mayor, and that was ultimately successful.
Yes,
so
very
I am
positive
greatly appreciative to the voters of the city of Canton and to everybody that came out and helped me with regard to that.
And let's talk about election night. I know there are watch parties that take place around the area. You, I understand, don't like to attend those until maybe the very, very end. I hear you were just out collecting your signs. You want to talk about that a bit?
That's what I normally do on election night, and that's what I have traditionally done. And I like to find out whether the decision is yes or no. And fortunately, in my life, it has always been a yes response. But I am a person that does not like to stand around with people and wait for election results to come in. On election night this year, it was a little bit different. We did take some signs down early but because there had been just so many people that volunteered for my campaign, we felt that it was necessary to have an election night party that was held at the Onesta Hotel. I think I didn't go down until about 10 o'clock, and there were still a number of precincts and votes yet to be counted, and that race was relatively close. So I did make an appearance, and then I went and disappeared for a couple of hours and waited until the results were final, and then I came back to the party, and it was a great party and a great election night celebration.
Yes, a great celebration. What goes through a person's mind at the moment when you realize, oh, I have a new job?
Oh, I try to keep everything in perspective. I guess I try to be like a football coach that you celebrate your victory on Sunday if you get one, and by Sunday night you have to be looking at the game film for next Sunday's game. That's my approach to government. So we had a great celebration, and by the next day I was back at it, contemplating what we needed to do now that the reality of office was a fact.
We're speaking
I
with.
try to keep my emotions in check throughout the campaign. Campaigning can be difficult, and there are a lot of highs and lows, and you just have to keep a perspective and keep your eye on the ball and proceed forward. And that's the same way that I attempt to bring to government. I try to again just create a very stable, emotional outlook on things, and just proceed every day with whatever the plan of attack is, and keep on proceeding.
We're speaking with Canton Mayor Thomas Burnaby. Let's get to what that plan of attack is. What were some of the things, as the new coach, we're taking a look at the game plan, some challenges that you're facing, you believe?
Well, throughout the campaign, I emphasized consistently that there were two primary issues associated with my running for mayor. One was leadership, and leadership is always number one because that is all-pervasive. Your style of leadership affects each and everything that government does or hopes to do. And again, there are many fronts associated with government, like the city of Canton. There are safety forces issues dealing with police and fire, which are critical. There are service issues dealing with water, with sanitation, with sewers, with roads. There are economic development issues. There are neighborhood issues. But the common denominator that the mayor brings to everything is that the manner in which he governs affects everything. So that's why I say it is all-pervasive. And the approach that you take to government is all-pervasive and very important to each and every area. The second thing that I emphasized during the election was that we need to take a very close look at Canton's finances. I did not believe that they were being accurately reported as far as the electioneering was going with regard to the mayor's race and the representations concerning it. I sat down with the auditor and the chief deputy auditor in the months prior to November and looked closely at the city's finances and ascertained from them that the city was really looking at that point in time, we thought a $3 million plus shortfall for 2016, and that was an issue that was not being discussed by anyone. And of course, money, I said leadership is all pervasive, but money is also all pervasive because you can and can't do things depending on whether or not the funds are or are not there. In reality, when we finally got to the numbers after January 1, we have now ascertained that the city has approximately an $5.1 million shortfall to close the gap. That $5 million is the difference between providing the level of services that were provided at the cost in 2015 versus cutting it down to the anticipated revenues in 2016. So, for example, in 2015, Canton government probably spent approximately $55.6 million, and in 2016, the auditor tells us that we only anticipate revenues of approximately $50 point something million dollars. So
Ooh.
the difference of those two numbers is the $5 million.
Yeah, wow.
And that difference occurred, both through, too many dollars were spent on the expenditure side of the ledger,
and not enough income.
Yeah. And in fact, the city's income taxes between 2015 and 2014 actually dropped about $2.3 to $2.5 million. So a combination of expenditures, too much expenditures, too little income is what led to that very, very large shortfall that we are facing.
Well, we'll get back with Mayor Burnaby on what he plans to do about this after these words. You're listening to Our Community.